Hello there, I'm Jason Ball, and this is a bonus episode of Life After News. Adam Jacobson of the Radio and Television Business Report is back again talking about the future of the television station business. One of the big stories, of course, is consolidation. Since we recorded this episode, Nexstar, which owns 197 TV stations, has entered into an agreement to buy Tegna. Gray Media is buying Allen Media TV stations. Sinclair says they're open to a merger. Cox and Graham have signaled they're open to sale. We talk about what all that means for the local markets and the newsroom. We also talk about something called NextGen TV, which is going to change a lot about the viewer experience of TV and why cable is still important. In your mind, what's going on with all the consolidation? And is this it's hard to say if it's a good thing or a bad thing, but just kind of what are your thoughts on three groups owning essentially half the TV stations in the country?
There's a belief that this consolidation is necessary for the long-term health of broadcast television, and that they are competing against big tech, that they're not competing against themselves so much as they're competing against Facebook and Instagram and Twitter and X and Blue Sky and you name it, all the way down to YouTube. There are myriad local advertisers that are choosing these local digital platforms, and I see study after study coming onto my email every day now that suggests that small local business owners and medium-sized business owners love the personalization and the CPMs of streaming and digital media, and sometimes those dollars don't trickle down to local TV news. And let's face it, if you are in a market like Missoula, Montana, how many news departments can the market really, support? One, two. You want more news programming. Sometimes fewer owners can yield more to the community. And this is the argument that a lot of the broadcast media companies have been arguing as a reason for consolidation. I'm not supporting that. I'm not saying that it's a bad thing. I'm just here to report the facts. And the facts are that this is an industry that is on the precipice of a major technological change. Without going into a lot of techie detail, there's a new broadcast signal that will eventually bring to viewers a television platform that is going to look no different than if you're going onto an app. So accessing your local TV station by going to channel 10 is going to be just like if you went to the local 10 Plus app. It's going to have menu choices. It's going to have an option to watch the main programming or pre-recorded programming. A whole new broadcast data operation is going to be tied to that. So broadcast TV companies have an opportunity to power the Internet of Things. This is $1 billion opportunity at stake here. And it's going to cost some money. And it's going to create a have and have not in broadcast media. Allen Media Group has decided that they want out. So that is done. They have sold. I would say by October 1st, Tegna will have agreed to sell their television stations to Nexstar Media Group. What will that mean? That will mean that the FCC is going to have to look at that carefully, because that proposed deal is currently over the ownership regulations, but those are poised to change. And that's what I think a lot of people are looking at is there's going to be deregulation under this current administration, and the FCC is ripe for it. So it's just a matter of time before that happens. Is it good or bad? I think that's anyone's guess. Again, it just comes down to how these stations are operated and managed. And, I've lived through it in the radio industry. It comes down to market by market. The West Palm Beach radio market is one of the finest in the United States, and that's with 3 owners. So again, it's a matter of how the companies are run and how they want to operate the stations in the local markets, and that's the challenge for broadcast television.
So I'm hearing two things are going on. There's the revenue for digital there's an opportunity there as that grows, yes, as opposed to the broadcast revenue, which is declining because the audience is declining. Am I hearing that right?
There's three revenue sources that are really key for
Right.
the broadcast television industry. Core advertising, which is, the 30-second or 60-second commercial, that's dying, and there's really no trends for it to ever return to the days of yesteryear. So if that's going to continue to go down, well, where is the growth? Well, there's still an opportunity for those commercials. It's just not on the prime time television channel, 10, at 8:30 to 9 p.m. It's when you log on to Local 10 and you get that pre-roll, or any advertising in the middle of an ad that you happen to be watching via streaming or digital. That's how they're going to continue to make money, because, again, that can be personalized. And addressable advertising solutions are what marketers want, and that's what they're getting on YouTube. So Local 10 now has a solution, and it's called digital. But with the new broadcast standard, that is going to be the reality of how all advertising on television will eventually be delivered come 2033. So those days are coming.
So I've been out for a little over 4 years, and I'd forgotten about the new signal. Refresh me, what's it called?
So it's ATSC 3.0 for us, the techie people, but it's really just NextGen TV. And they're running a platform called Run 3 TV in some markets already. And literally what this is going to do is, for example, at Channel 4, Local 4 in Detroit, if you go to their NextGen channel, it's not like you're just going to go there and you're going to see a program. It's going to look exactly like if you went to the Local 4 Plus app. It's going to have a menu. It's
over the air.
Over the air. And this is the future of television. And that means that if I'm an advertiser, I can say to you, Jason, oh, well, I know what you like and I know what you don't like. So I'm going to tailor the advertising to you based on your preferred consumer habits, because you've opted in and we have optics on you.
Right. That is a huge game changer, because you can target advertising just like everybody else does on that. And when is that coming into effect?
That's the $1 million question, because right now the NAB is asking the FCC to have an official transition date. And the cable industry says absolutely not, because that is going to essentially kill us. You cannot put a mandate in on this. It's already out there. So there's a huge fight. The broadcast TV industry had, up until the change in administration, been fine with a voluntary transition. It'll eventually get to a point where enough people will have these television sets and set-top boxes where it will be a standard that, we'll get to. With the change in administration, all of a sudden the tone changed and was like, nope, we need to do this. We need to do this now. And without getting into detail, there are certain companies that have invested a lot of money in this that now see that, the sooner the better in terms of transitions.
So the transition to NextGen TV is an expensive proposition, I assume.
It is, because it's not backwards compatible. So it's expensive for the consumer. It's not so much expensive to the broadcast TV industry as it was when they went from analog broadcasts at the end of the 90s to digital. That was a very costly proposition for television at that time. This is not so costly for TV companies, but for the average consumer, it's going to be a couple $100 to get this new standard to your televisions, however that is delivered. And let's keep in mind that
into the new sets.
Well, there is built-in capability for the new sets. If not, there are dongles or something like a USB that you would just put in there. And again, the broadcast TV industry is convinced that there will be enough interest in this where it will be a success. The challenge there.
They should just buy them and send them to their viewers.
Well. Again, there's a challenge to this, and again, I want to be fair to all of our readers at the Radio and Television Business Report. These are questions that have been going on for 6 years. What do you do in a market like New York? I'm originally from New York, and there's a reason why Manhattan Cable established itself 45 years ago, because when you live in the Upper East Side in between all these high rises, getting broadcast reception is miserable. So that's why we had those little punch set-top box channel changers in 1983, so we could actually get Channel 9 and Channel 7 and Channel 5 without having to change the rabbit ears around every time we wanted to watch some different station. In a next-gen TV environment, that is going to have to be a proposition all over again, because Spectrum ain't going to be giving you ATSC 3.0 delivered next-gen TV. Okay, so I get a digital TV, or maybe my building puts it up at the top of the building, and I'm in the Upper East Side of Manhattan, and that's great. But what happens when I'm in Ulster County, New York, which is 90 minutes north of New York City, where the amount of broadcast TV channels I can get today is zero?
Right.
DirecTV came out yesterday. That would be
I
August
saw that.
14th for those that are watching this on delay. They basically sent a statement to the FCC saying, yeah, we are unable to provide our customers with next-gen TV unless we jimmy it so that it goes backwards, because the cost to us to try to do that would be so exorbitant that we would have to pass it on to the consumer, and that would never happen. So they've basically said, put a stop to any mandate for a change. This is not going to work for us. Well, if it's not going to work for DirecTV, then how would it work for Dish? How would it work for Spectrum? And how is anyone in Kingston, New York ever going to get next-gen TV?
That's fair, especially even in Los Angeles, because there's so many. The terrain is so bad. I mean, the place I lived in, LA, you couldn't get anything.
Yeah, good luck if you're in Mandeville Canyon. What are you going to get?
Right.
You're going to get San Diego.
Maybe, if the weather's right. No, but everything should be like South Florida. You get everything there because it's so flat.
Right. So again, in some markets it's going to be just fine. In other markets, there are challenges ahead.
That's like when in Miami we had 2 towers to receive our microwave signals, and in Los Angeles they're all on the top of mountains and they're all over the place because the terrain is so such a challenge for covering news. That's interesting. So now we're back to reception. So the cable companies will have to be involved in it somehow, then, right?
One would think.
Wow.
No one has an answer. No one knows how. If you ask Pearl TV about how they're going to be negotiating with the cable companies, they're not going to give you an answer. The broadcast television companies are saying that, well, we're going to negotiate them just like as we do with the current channels. And, we all know how that goes whenever there's a blackout. There's a lot of unanswered questions about what this is all going to mean. But again, we rolling back to the original start of this conversation of Local 10, there's one part of all this that the industry has kind of forgotten about, which is, we're the consumers. How is the consumer actively watching local television programming or national television programming? What does the consumer even think television is? And more, it's going to their Roku or their Fire TV or their YouTube TV, and they're watching Netflix or they're watching Local 10 on the app for local news, and they don't know the difference. More and more consumers are watching video programming via streaming, and that could be great for local TV, or it could be a harbinger of death. And it's just a matter of how they understand where the consumer is and follow the consumer and do it properly. There is a vibrant future for local TV. It just needs to figure out how to best deliver to the consumer in the most efficient way possible.
Well, or is it multiple ways of delivering to the consumer? Because people just consume things differently.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, as long as it's available on a phone, first and foremost, that's key. Then make it available on your television.
So you think mobile is more important than the set-top box?
Of course. It's the most important device in the world.
That's true. It's surprising we even still call it a phone, because that's the last thing the least I use it for making phone calls less than anything.
It's a television, it's a radio, it's a computer, it's a phone, it's a communication device where I can text someone, send photos. It's everything and in all being. And if I am not accessible on a smartphone, then why am I in business?
That's fair. All right, I have two kind of follow-up questions to what we're talking about.
Sure.
So cable and broadcast are still intertwined and codependent on one another because of all these things we've discussed.
Well, I think that's because of just the heritage way that a lot of consumers who are heavy television viewing in households have always gotten their television channels. Let's face it, television viewership is still skewing older. When it comes to linear television, you're still going to see 45 plus, in some markets it's 60 plus. And those viewers are more likely to be watching linear television channels through a cable TV provider or DirecTV or Dish, because that's what they're familiar with. That's what they're comfortable with. That's what they know. They're still using DVR and they're still using on demand, and, they'll still go to Channel 10 at 7 o'clock to watch Wheel of Fortune and Jeopardy every weeknight. And that's not going to go away anytime soon. But then there's the question of, well, eventually some of those people aren't going to be with us anymore. They're going to be moving on to the next plane. And, we're going to be at a point where, I'm collecting Social Security, and if I'm in that generation, then what happens to, my nephew who's at University of Florida right now, when he's 30 and when the 30-year-old is, going to be 40, we need to think about how to future-proof this business. Future-proofing this business is ensuring that it is accessible through all devices, and the phone needs to be number one.
But I can even see that with my parents. They'll watch the local news, but then at night they're on Netflix or Tubi or whatever, at night. So it's interesting that generation's even not watching broadcast as much.
And let's mention that Tubi is owned by the Fox Television Corporation.
Right.
So they're savvy. They understand where people are going. Pluto TV is tied to a broadcast television network as well. So that's a whole other conversation that we don't really have time for today. There's this growth in what's called free ad-supported streaming television, or fast channels.
Yeah.
Well, okay, so if you're watching this and you're like, Adam, what are you talking about? It's as simple as this, and it's as confusing as this. Because when you go and you put on your Samsung TV and you see that live TV icon, you think in your Los Angeles, oh, I'm going to watch KTLA. That is not local TV. That is a live TV in the sense that I'm going to watch the Family Ties channel and I'm going to get nothing but Family Ties episodes from 40 years ago, and it's going to be great. That's the world we live in. And that's, of course, designed to confuse the consumer because they're making money on it.
That's fair. So, okay, now back to consolidation. When last we into consolidation, the notion for it's good is because it's going to be so expensive to invest in this new technology.
The idea of consolidation is such where there are going to be operators that will not best profit in a marketplace where the competition is such that there's only so much that they can do. If they're in a marketplace where there are 3 or 4 news departments, let's say they're not in the top 2 when it comes to ratings, the competitive dynamic of that market is such where, they've done a yeoman's job. They've really tried hard to, get to number 1. But if there's no way to even get to number 2, then, where at some point are they going to say, we're done? The market is better served by having this become a sister station to a number 1 or number 2 property. They can bring it into that news organization. They can make that news organization even bigger and bolder. And, that will ultimately benefit the community. Again, you can agree or disagree with that. But that's kind of where the future is for this industry. And that's not to say that you're going to be seeing that in a market the size of Los Angeles or New York. It could happen, but what's to say that it's not going to happen tomorrow in Mobile, Alabama?
Right. Right. So how many TV stations doing 90 hours a week of news can one market support? It's certainly not more than 2, maybe 3, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to see TV stations sign off the air. But I do think that we're going to see consolidation in the sense that there's going to be, potentially fewer newsrooms, but the same amount or greater amount of news programming as a result of this. So again, the consumer will eventually benefit. One will, of course, argue that there's a diversity of voices at stake here. But look, I'm in South Florida, and I can argue that, okay, well, yeah, the Fox News, or whatever, the Fox 29, is really just WPTV. They're providing the news with a different banner, and it's the same people. That's not a diversity of voices, because, that's two distinct television stations with the same news department going up against the local CBS station and the local ABC station. But there's also the Palm Beach Post. There's also a local radio station, WFTL. There's also the Sun Sentinel newspaper, and there are the bloggers and the Next Doors and all of the other community news organizations. The Coastal Star is a great monthly magazine newspaper. That's the world we live in. We have to think bigger than just we're competing against the 2 other TV stations. You're not. And when we think about the diversity of voices, we have to take all of those other voices into consideration outside of TV and radio, because that's where the dollars are going.
Just hyper-local newsletters and websites are great. You get great stories from there and sort of things. So you're also a podcaster. Tell us about your podcast.
Well, thank you. So with the Radio and Television Business Report, we have the In Focus podcast. It is now a video podcast. We sunsetted our 5-year audio podcast, and we now have a YouTube channel. And that's where we talk with the newsmakers in broadcast television and radio about the pulse of the industry, what's going on in their local market, what's going on the corporate level. We've talked to some key people at Hearst Television and the EW Scripps Company. We started the series by speaking with Johnny Green Jr., who runs CBS New York. And these are great conversations. We'd like to speak with more people in the radio industry as well, because that's certainly integral and very important to the local news and content aspect of where the American consumer needs to be and wants to be.
That's great. So it's called the In Focus video podcast. Right?
Located on our YouTube channel, but you can also go to rbr.com and you'll find out more about, how you can access that podcast and where you can watch it there as well.
All right. I appreciate the time, Adam, and the insight.
Thank you.
I think we'll do a few more episodes about the business of the business and the future of news. Let me know what you think. You can connect through our website, lifeafternewsnews.com, or follow me on Instagram at Mr. Jason Ball or at lifeafternewspod. Back to regular programming next Tuesday with Sharon Tay, former MSNBC, KTLA, and KCAL anchor, and she's now selling super luxury real estate in Los Angeles. If you like the show, subscribe, leave good reviews, give us good ratings, and share it with a friend. Until next time.